Greetings, chess fans. My name is Arturs Neiksans. I'm the leading Latvian chess grandmaster, and I'm back with yet another video of my own games that I've played, at least recently, in international chess tournaments and chess leagues, since I'm still not only a content creator but also a professional player. So that's why this is going to be yet another installment of the video series Inside the Mind of a Grandmaster. This particular game I played last weekend on Saturday. I was playing in the second Bundesliga, which is one of the strongest leagues in Europe. I mean, of course, the first Bundesliga is much stronger. There we have the likes of, if you know these guys, like Magnus Carlsen, Demiraj Gukesh, Arjun Nerigaisi. So they're playing at the highest division, and we're trying to get back to the highest division, and this match was an important one to get there. So I was playing with a white color. My opponent was Thibaut van den Busch, an international master from Belgium. And since I had done, before this weekend, I had done a bootcamp on the English opening, and I hadn't really played English opening for a while, I thought, let's do it. Let's just play c4 and see what happens. When I was prepping for the game, I noticed that my opponent really likes all kinds of Tarrasch positions. Yeah, so for example, if I would play d4, d5, c4, e6, knight f3, c5, well, I thought it's not a big deal because at least I can always play g3, quoting once again one of the strongest German grandmasters, Alexander Donchek, who said against the Tarrasch with g3, you don't really need to know much because engines really like everything for white. Well, actually it's not so simple. So I played c4, my opponent played e6, I played g3, and my idea was to meet with this bishop g2. I think I had seen one game by Van den Busch. He had played d-takes on c4, then I played queen a4, knight e7, queen c4. I had a couple of games played in this line. I mean, it's not a big deal, but what is pressing all this? And this was a Saturday game. By the way, I was feeling quite sleepy before the start of the game. Couldn't really explain it. Yeah, so the game started at 2 p.m. and yeah, somehow I was just not feeling it. Yeah, so I was looking for a quieter game. But now look at this. My opponent plays c5, and to be honest, I had never seen this move before, at least in this move order. So I'm thinking what to do. So obviously I need to push d4 at some point. So if I play something like, let's say, knight f3, he could play knight f6 and short castle, and even d-takes on c4 is a thing, like knight c6, I will have to play d4. I mean, it's impossible to play this position without pushing d4. But there was another moment that I did not like, is that after knight f3, he can actually take on c4 and try to solve the problem of the Catalan bishop on c8. So check, here, queen c4, bishop c6. I think the black is pretty much great. So that's why I felt that this knight f3 is a bit inaccurate move. So I decided to take on d5 right away. And after he takes on d5, I play knight f3. I was considering, can I play d4 right away? But I was not sure if after c takes on d4, can I play queen d4? Because look at this position. What I was doing in the game, I was comparing this particular position with another line I used to play in English opening. And that happens after e5, g3, c6, which is a very modern combination. Now I play d4, e takes on d4, queen d5, queen d4, d5, and I play bishop g2. So if black takes on c4, white takes on c4, white has a pawn majority at the king side, then probably a slightly better position. And now after knight f6, the common idea is to c-takes, and knight f3. And then if black plays knight c6, I choose between queen a4 and queen d3, and white has a small edge, mainly because of the pressure against the pawn on d5. So I'm showing all of this because it was looking very similar to what I was getting in the game. And now the point is, after c-takes, if I play d4 right away, the thing is, maybe he doesn't really have to play knight f6, because then after knight f3 I transpose. And I thought this looks very similar to one line I know from a different variation, where black can play knight c6, queen d5, and again, I didn't really calculate this too much. I thought this move could be a thing, like knight e4. I also thought that bishop e6 could be a move, like takes, and I have the pawn, but again, he has stuff like knight b4, knight e4 has a very good development, and I just couldn't figure out, is this good or not? So that's why I decided to play knight f3, make sure that all of this is not happening, but of course, also I need to make sure that d4 is not a thing for black. So I play castles, I play e3, I open up the position very quickly, and I don't think he can close the center with d3, because after something like queen b3, knight e5, I think it's going to be a bit too much for black. So he can't do this, he played knight f6, and now we just transpose. So now I play d4, I'm ready to recapture d4 with a knight. He played knight c6, the castles, here. But there was one problem. Up to this moment, I had spent already 15 minutes. And as I already said, I've been in this situation many times. Like, again, sometimes you just don't wake up properly. Like, you get up from the bed with the left foot or something. And usually the rule for me is when I'm feeling slightly under the weather, I'm waiting for like 1 hour or 2 hours so that the brain starts to work. So I try to play out the position very carefully, not make very big decisions, and then eventually get back in the rhythm. So what happened here is that, yeah, I played knight c3. My opponent played short castle. And here I was thinking, what are the options? So I chose to play d takes on c5. But actually, after this game, I'm quite convinced that probably the best move is bishop g5. And basically, I'm threatening to play bishop f6 and d takes on c5. So I think he has to play c4. And now in these lines, I get to play like e3, knight e2, knight f4, take on f6, and play b3, applying some pressure against the pawn on d5. I think that white is always slightly better. And I don't think that black really has any choices. So if he plays c takes on d4, knight e4, h6, I just go back on e3. So I think this is like a dream position of the IQP, where the player who goes for the IQP, meaning black, he's supposed to get some sort of a king set attack. And now, yeah, I just don't see it. But I decided to take on c5, and this was probably one of the reasons was that I already had played this continuation before. Bishop c5. Now, I spent some time trying to recall some very old analysis, because I knew knight a4 is the main move. I mean, the old move in this position. But I tried to recall what was after a3, so I want to play b4 and bishop b2, and I was pretty sure that black has to sacrifice a pawn with knight e4. And if I play knight e5, bishop e6, black gets a very nice activity. And if I play something like queen c2, again, I'm threatening knight e4, queen c5, just could not recall what is this. So he probably gets to play d4 very quickly, some bishop f5 for bishop g4, rook e8, pressure here. And just could not figure out, am I doing even better? Maybe I am, after something like b4, with bishop b2 to follow. So what I decided to do, I just decided to play what I normally play, at least what I had played before. I play bishop e3, and the big idea, the big dream for white is to play bishop c5, trade the bishops, and then they get this knight on d4, and maybe play e3. But as you probably can suspect, all of this takes forever. So my opponent played bishop g4, and apparently now a very important intermezzo move is h3. To be honest, I didn't really pay any attention to this move, because there are some lines when it's important to put the bishop on h5, because he will have more difficulties to protect the pawn on d5. So actually my opponent after the game said he has to take on f3, bishop takes on f3, but now he has some problems with the pawn. And this is a forcing line like d4. I take on c6, I want to win the pawn on d4. Now either I take on d8 or take on b7, it doesn't really matter. We just trade the queens. And I think that this pretty much is a free roll, where white has an extra pawn, but probably the game is quite drawish, because there's obstacle bishops on the board, and my pawn structure, the king side, is slightly shattered. But still, I think it's risk-free game, and no, I would have no issues to try this if I had known this line. So instead I played rook c1 here. And the idea of this move is to play bishop c5. Again, maybe knight c5, and just have a better control of the c file. My opponent played pretty quickly queen d7. And the more I started to spend time on this position, the less I liked it. So the first thing I'm looking at the position, I'm thinking, why not knight c5? It just asked to be played, like bishop c5, I get two bishops on the board, he has an IQP in the center, I have no weaknesses. But the point is, after rook e8, I just did not see the next move. So what I'm doing, I couldn't move the queen, the pawn is hanging, I cannot play queen e2, there's knight e4. I cannot play e3, that creates a pin. I cannot play h3 because it's under attack. So I had major difficulties just to find a move, maybe some rook e1 quiet move or something, I don't know. So I decided not to go here, and decided to proceed with a plan to play bishop c5. My opponent played rook e8. And now I thought this is the time to improve the queen, like queen b3, rook d1, and try to apply some pressure. The engine, by the way, hates it. The engine says this is not correct. Well, in the game, I thought that it's logical. Engine likes to trade the bishops and play h3, which I suppose makes sense, and I'll play rook e1. So I think the big idea is to play knight e4, knight c3, maybe queen d3, e3. If I do that, maybe I get some pressure. But to be honest, I mean, this position is quite equalish, no matter how you look. So I play queen b3, my opponent went here, and I play pretty quickly rook d1. So my idea was, okay, he's going to play knight e4, and he's threatened to take on c5 twice and win the pawn on e2. So what I was thinking I can make any move. And he's not even threatening to play knight c5, right? So I thought I could even do this. And if he takes it, and I take it, and he takes the pawn on e2, I play rook d5. So he has some problems off the back rank. Even though we have a symmetrical pawn structure, I thought I have the more active pieces. But of course I can make a better move than the random move a3. Well, to be honest, when I started to think about this position deeply, I realized I don't have any other move. And a3 just looks ridiculous because he can just play h6, for example, and then what? I mean, at Zugzwang? So I decided to take on e7, queen e7, and use the fact that he no longer guards the h3 square and play h3. So I thought I need to do this. Yeah, by the way, I cannot take on d5, the pawn, because there's bishop e6, pitting my rook and the queen. And I thought that h3 is pretty smart, because if he goes here, I just collect the pawn. Okay, maybe he has some compensation, some dynamics like takes and knight f6 and get the pawn on e2, but I'm not really sure if he can take it. So I thought I'm definitely calling the shots here. And he just played very quickly bishop e6. And I realized I had not paid attention to the position, because suddenly d4 is very difficult to stop. I was thinking, can I play knight e4? And it just had a very bad taste in the mouth. Because the point after knight e4, queen d4, you definitely got a sense, some ideas to hit the rook on d4 and on f2. So by the way, knight x and f2 immediately doesn't work, because after queen f6 there's rook f4. But this idea might work, like he might play queen f6. So I play queen e3, I protect the f2 square, I protect the rook on d4, and I saw from afar he can go here. Bishop takes on h3. So if I take it, he plays knight g3 and plays queen d4. So I saw this position from afar and I did not like it. But actually here the engine says my calculation is very sloppy. I should just take on e4 and then take on h3. And now the point is, after rook e4, bishop e4, d takes on e4, I play knight c3, and I still keep the balance on the board, as I will get back the lost pawn. But the point is, it is losing, and not because of queen f6 or knight f2. If you want to find the solution, you can pause the video right now and try to figure out black to play and win. So if you did it, you pause the video and you devoted some time for this position, probably it's going to require you like 5 minutes. It's great if you found b5. And that's it. So white is toast. After b5, queen b5, now there's queen f6, and there's no queen e3. And also the same problem is after knight c3, queen f6. So the queen cannot get to e3. Such a nice, quiet, invisible Zwischenzug. Anyway, I mean, the point is, I saw this, that 94, even though I didn't see b5, I just had a very bad feeling. It's not going to end well. And I was thinking, what can I do then? Because if I play queen e3, he just plays at least queen b4. Now what? So he wants to attack the pawn, and after b3, maybe have some problems to defend the pawn. So I just didn't see a move. So maybe after queen b4, I have to go back and beg for a draw. So I thought, okay, maybe things are not so bad, and I play queen b5. By the way, it goes without saying that I was still sleeping. Yeah, not really. Like, my brain was not working at all, so I was hoping that this is somehow going to pass and just give me the opportunity to play e3, knight e4, maybe knight c5, and I'm going to live. So my opponent played very quickly d4, which probably is the right move. I looked at some lines with bishop d7, but probably it's not working. I mean, there's some nice tricks like queen b7, knight a5, or queen d5, and knight b4, bishop a4, bishop h3. I thought this move definitely deserves an attention. Also, knight e4 is a threat. What would have many moves? But he played the correct move d4. Attack the pawn on a2. And now what should I do? So I already had a feeling something is going terribly wrong with my game. And I just, without any deep calculation, decided to play knight e2 because I want to get rid of the knight on e4. But before I did it, I had to make sure that there's no sacrifice on f2. Because it just feels with the queen on b5, there might be some shots on f2. King f2, and maybe bishop h3. But the point is, the queen on b5 protects the pawn on e2, so probably I can just take it, and this is nothing. Also, I had to make sure what happens if he just takes it and, for example, collects the pawn. So my idea from afar was to play knight c5, ignore the bishop on a2, go for some counterattack, and I thought probably I will survive. What happened here, he played a6 and he spent quite a bit of time on this move, and I had a feeling I could not go here. Because it kind of insists on the knight c5, but again, it basically screams for knight f2. Because now you see the queen on b5 cannot protect the pawn, and then after bishop d5, black's attack is just killing, like queen e2 here. To be honest, I didn't deeply calculate this. I thought there's definitely like rook e3 something. Maybe there's bishop f3, but it just looks so dangerous. So based on the gut instinct, I just dropped queen b6, I played queen d3. Now what? Now here my opponent played knight e2, which according to an engine is a miss. He should have played knight g5, hit a pawn on h3, but to be honest, it's a very difficult move to make. Especially if you see there's knight e2 and bishop a2, you're about to win a pawn. Or even knight b4 and bishop takes on a2. So knight g5, h4, knight h3, king goes here. The knight might be stuck on h3. So I can't really blame him, not even mentioning about the capture on h3. So my king is slightly weakened, like this position, takes, and maybe, I don't know, knight c5. So from afar, it's, not very obvious for black. Even though I didn't argue, black is definitely much better. So he decided to take on d2. And now I have no choice. So if I take with a queen, he just collects the pawn. I have no compensation for the pawn. So bishop b3 is a threat. I go here. He plays bishop d5. So I looked at this line briefly. I could win the pawn, but probably I can just resign after queen d6. So he protects the knight and kills my knight on a6. So I couldn't do it. Then I was thinking maybe I can recapture the rook, but now there's a knight b4 move. And again, I'm probably just losing the pawn with no compensation. So I decided to include intermezzo move bishop c6, b takes and rook takes on d2. So I was thinking, okay, I'm in trouble. I know that. Yeah, and I'm still sleeping and I'm just not very happy how I'm playing this game. And I thought he can either take it here, he can take it here. I mean, probably bishop a2 makes no sense. I play b3, I attack the bishop on a2, so he might actually lose it. I thought he has to go here, and it took me some time to find the best move, rook c4, because I figured that I need to eliminate the pawn on d4. And from afar, I saw that he has to go here. I collect the pawn. He cannot take on e2 because his pieces are overloaded, and because of the back rank issue, black is simply losing a piece. So I thought he has to take it, play bishop e2. Now he's threatening here. I go here. And from afar, I thought maybe I can save this. So if I got to trade queens, like trade the queens off the board, because of these weaknesses with my knight, with my rook, I might get very good chances to save the game. Which, by the way, is completely correct. So bishop h3, I'm not losing. But now came the shocker. My opponent played queen b4. And I mean, I saw this move just before he executed. I was like, oh, wow. So he's threatened to take on a4 and threatened to play bishop f5 and win my rook on d2. Now what? So I saw maybe I have to play queen c2, the only move to meet bishop f5 with queen d1. But it just looked very ugly. I mean, he can just take on h3 and then the attack continues. So I was quite lucky to find knight c5 with the idea to meet bishop f5 with e4. And when I found it, I was pretty sure I'm not going to lose, because the point is black cannot play d takes on e3 and passant, I take on d8. So it doesn't matter that the rook on d2 is hanging by the queen, or the rook on e8 is hanging for black, and he couldn't take on d8. I was very, very happy to have found this. He did go here anyway, and now here we got a pretty equalish endgame. But to be honest, I was not really in the mood to fight for the win, because I was still unbelievably sleepy, and I thought, unbelievable. I played so badly this game, and now I got a chance to escape, so let's just try to survive until the end. Here I thought actually this check was looking pretty interesting, with queen a5. Some queen a2 or queen a5 check ideas. For example, if I go here, he gives a check. I cannot play queen f3. That's the key. There's rook g1. I take on g1, I lose the queen. Very, very important resource. But actually here, I forgot about queen d4. So there's no queen d5 check, and he cannot take on d4 because of the back rank mate. So I did not see this, to be honest. Again, probably it shows the state of my calculation abilities during this game. He didn't give a check on e1. He played h5, which kind of makes sense. He makes a window for the king, and he wants to be still aggressive. I played rook d1, covered the first rank. Now I want to take on e4, since the rook on d2 is no longer under attack. He played here. I protected the pawn. He played h4. And based on the gut instinct and some general knowledge in similar positions, I just decided to take it, because I've noticed that many players often find this move surprising. So it's like, it's supposed to be automatic move g4 to protect the king, right? But the difference is, after g takes on h4, I didn't really think my king is so exposed, and he has to waste a tempi for rook takes on h4, disconnecting his rooks. Maybe he saw this line, rook h4, rook c4, that he's dropping the pawn, but to be honest, he's not. He just played queen d6. I cannot take on d4 because there's rook e1 check. Pretty common idea. King g2 and rook d1. I'm losing a rook. Yeah, so, I mean, of course, I saw this, so I would have played... I think I would have played something like queen f3. That was the idea. Maybe rook c4, queen f3, just to solidify the position. I just thought I'm doing okay. But now he played a5. And yeah, so here I had about 3 minutes. My opponent had maybe 5 minutes. And I was thinking, I mean, I gotta play h5. So if my opponent is not taking, I gotta play h5. I gotta be ambitious with some queen g3 and h6 ideas, and let him prove what does he have for the pawn. But I made the chicken move, king g2. Yeah, like I already said, I was just not feeling well in this game, so I was just making sure I'm not missing any tricks. So he took at h4, I played rook c4, he gave me a check, I played queen f3, and yeah, here black basically agreed to a draw. So he decided to take on f3, I gave up the pawn, I collected the pawn on d4, and after rook e to e5, my opponent offered a draw. So I would have continued the game if we had traded the one pair of rooks, because I thought I have a chance to organize an outside pass pawn on the queen side, and his king is a bit far away. But with two rooks on the board, there's just no way that this pawn is going to move. So what I did, of course, I checked very quickly what's the result in all the other games. So this is a team event on 8 boards. Of course, I was not super excited about making a draw, but of course, still, it's much better than losing. So I looked at positions, everything was looking pretty all right. We're losing, by the way, at the point, but some of the positions were looking pretty promising, and I agreed to draw. Yeah, so my opponent was quite unhappy after the game that he missed some opportunities. He probably is right. He played a very good game that I cannot say about me, but I think the lesson here is that it's better to play a terrible game and still draw rather than play a beautiful game and lose it in an exciting fashion. Yeah, so I'll take it. I'll take the draw. But that's it. Tell your experience, the viewers. How do you feel about the Tarrasch variation? Because after this game, my opinion about it changed. I always thought it's... I mean, with the Fee and Cat or G3, Bishop G2, it's not very serious continuation because white can just basically play everything. But now I'm not so sure. I think actually it's a pretty decent continuation. Probably this means a lot coming from somebody who plays the Dutch defense, I suppose. So tell your thoughts. How do you fare with the Tarrasch variation? Do you enjoy playing against it, or you play the variation yourself? And of course, if you like my video and the recap and everything, and you like my personality, etc., just please press like, of course. And if you're not yet a sub of the channel, please consider subscribing. So I'm gonna end here. Thank you for watching.